Hey everybody, we're back. Really doing it this time. We're gonna start putting out videos on the regular, possibly twice a week. Try and come up with a regular schedule. Each video we're gonna start out by diving into the history of the different spirits I made, what my thought process was going into those, and then eventually we'll start diving into other aspects of the distilling world and creative world and music and basically whatever I want to talk about at the time. But I hinted at in the last video, I think I hinted at it, that years ago in my late teens, early 20s, I did a ton of video editing. I did a bunch of skate videos, music videos, short films, and all that just kind of got pushed to the wayside as I got older and then started on this project. And part of what was holding me back from doing these videos was I had to relearn all of those skills on new software and stuff I was not used to using. And it's crazy what you can do on just your phone now. Things that used to take me hours, I can knock out in a very short amount of time now that I'm learning how to actually do it. So finally done dragging my feet. Touching on that though, making skate videos, skateboarding itself was a big impact on why I do things the way I do. Skateboarding, if you're not familiar, is essentially all about reimagining the world around you. Like, you don't see stairs or a bank or a rail for what they are. You see what the possibilities are within those, and you have to reimagine different ways to use those things. And a lot of that way of thinking comes across in how I approach my spirit making. Which leads us to today's word of the day. Innovation. What is it? Innovation is just bringing a new process to an already established product or idea and thinking about it in a different way. There is sadly, in my opinion, especially when I started this, a lack of innovation in the distilling world. There are a ton of like so-called craft distillers out there who are either just making the same stuff that other people make, bourbon, vodka, I talk about this all the time if you come into the shop and ask me, or even worse, they're just buying it from someone else, slapping their label on it, and then not even telling you more often than not that they had no hand in creating said product. And while a lot of those established things like bourbon I love, like that's what got me into spirits, there's so much more possibility within the realm of distilling. I always tell people, like, you don't start a craft brewery to make Bud Light. Bud Light is out there. It exists. They got it covered. Same with bourbon. Kentucky's got bourbon pretty well covered. We don't need more people making bourbon, especially young bourbon. I always equate it to, if you're just making bourbon, you're essentially playing in a cover band. I love music analogies. And cover bands are fine. They have their place, but it's so much more gratifying, rewarding to write your own music and create something new to put out into the world. And then as for the people just filling bottles and slapping their label on it, they're like a DJ, not even a real DJ. You're not even getting a remix. They're just queuing up a song for you and playing it and then taking all the credit for it. But I'm all about, even though it's a lot harder, trying to create new stuff. Which is why my first spirit I made, Dear Johnny. This is why I started up 451 Spirits. I wanted to see more innovation and creativity in the world of distilling. So I looked at what other whiskeys, like how they were made, what made them taste the way they do, and I kind of cherry picked from different areas of the world of distilling. I love the impact of flavor you get from using a pot still, like in single malt scotch. But I wanted more American style grains and like that new barrel flavor. Brand new barrels have a lot more impact on the flavor. So I wanted the sweetness of a new barrel, but I wanted that rich, heavy pot still flavor. And I also wanted it smoky, because I love smoky scotch, but I wanted to make it American. I grew up here in the middle of Ohio. There's not a lot of peat bogs around here. So when I think smoky, I think hardwood smoke. I think campfire, barbecue, wood-burning stove. Growing up, we always went to my great-grandma's on the weekends, and they always had the wood-burning stove going. Even in summer, it was kind of ridiculous at times. But those smells are just inherent in my like just built into my memories, and they're good memories. That's one of my favorite things about distilled spirits is like aroma, especially, can be such like a time machine. Like you'll smell something and it'll immediately take you back to a very specific point in your life. And so coming up with Dear Johnny, I wanted to try to incorporate all these different things I like and make it my own. So the mash bill, I didn't want to do corn or wheat because those are already well-trodden paths. I love stout beer, and so I had the idea of using stout beer mash bill. So I came up with barley, rye, oats, and then roasted barley. Now, roasted barley is cooked or roasted, basically the same way you'd roast coffee beans, and it caramelizes the sugars in the grain and imparts a lot of flavor into it, which you taste in a dark beer. But when you caramelize the sugar, it's no longer accessible to the yeast, and so it won't add any additional alcohol to the final mash. And I had a lot of distillers telling me when I started off and I was talking about this, they didn't see any value in using it because they didn't think the flavors were going to translate into the final product. But I had a hunch that it would, and it does. And that's also one of the reasons I did that was I knew I'd be putting out a young spirit. Very young distillery. I couldn't wait 5, 6, 7 years to put out my first whiskey. So I wanted to pack as much flavor into the unaged white spirit as I could before it even saw a barrel, just to kind of give it a head start. Sure enough, I ran it and you could taste those chocolatey undertones in the White Dog itself. As far as barrel aging, I borrowed an idea from Spanish sherry makers and some Scotch distillers called a Solera system. So I'd start off in these small 23-gallon barrels. A lot of small craft distillers use these smaller barrels because they have a lot more surface contact area and impart a lot of color and flavor into the whiskey very quickly. The problem with that is it can overpower the spirit if you leave it too long. It never fully mellows out. So what a Solera is, it's basically constant fractional blending. And the way I did it is I started in these 23-gallon barrels. I'd let it age for a minimum of 6 months. I'd go through and taste, and whenever I thought a barrel was ready, I'd take up to half of each barrel that was ready, pull enough out of my small barrels to fill one of my large 53-gallon brand new barrels, let it age there longer where it would mellow out more fully. And when I thought the big barrel was ready, I'd do a bottling run off of that, always taking up to half of it, and then I'd refill that with other small barrels that I thought were ready. The small barrels that were half empty got topped off with new make fresh off the still. And so it's just constant cycling through stuff just to achieve like a pretty well balanced and fairly mature tasting whiskey for a young spirit. Our first batch was only a little over 6 months old when we came out with it. The labels have changed a lot. This was the original label. It was candy apple red and green. So I mentioned I wanted it smoky. The way I got smoke into the whiskey, I initially tried just smoking the grain itself the way you would single malts, and I could not get the amount of smoke I was looking for. I got up to smoking a batch of grain for a full day. Full day in the smokehouse, smell it, very smoky, mash it, still smells very smoky. By the time it got double distilled, all that smoke was gone. So I tried to think of a different way to impart those flavors I was looking for. And that's where I kind of took a look towards gin, which is flavored after it's already distilled and then redistilled. But came up with the idea of smoking apples because I thought the flavor of apples would pair well with the whiskey. And so smoke the apples, again, for a full day, soak them in part of the whiskey, and then redistill that whiskey with the smoked apples. And then come bottling time, I would age them separately and then blend them together. The trouble with that is because apples are not a traditional part of whiskey making, we had to call it a smoked apple flavored whiskey. And if you know any whiskey snobs, we typically don't drink flavored whiskey. I think flavored whiskey, think like Crown Apple, Jim Beam, cinnamon, any of those just nonsense like candy flavored spirits made with whiskey. I thought people would take a chance on us being new and small and local, and some people did. But the trouble with the label being Candy Apple Red and Green with a big apple on it is Crown Apple came out at the same time I was releasing this. And so the people that like Crown Apple would give this a go, thinking, oh, there's a local version of Crown Apple. Try it. Hate it. People would appreciate what this was when it touch it, because they assumed it was going to taste like a Jolly Rancher. And so we were just kind of stuck in purgatory for a while. Because of that, I ended up putting out our next whiskey, Bone Shaker, which I'll talk about in the next video, which is the same exact whiskey, just without the smoked apple component, for people that were scared to try the smoked apple one, and also for people that don't like smoke. Also, the next video, coming up on St. Paddy's Day, I'm going to talk about the history of Irish whiskey and how close Bone Shaker actually is to the original, like, traditional Irish whiskey before it became what it is today. We'll dive more into that. So that's a bit of the backstory with Dear Johnny. Doing these videos, I'm going to start off going through all of our spirits, and eventually we'll start diving into some other topics. And I decided at the end of each video, I want to talk about a couple things that inspire me, that are currently inspiring me or have inspired me in the past. And then also I want to talk about different either bands, artists, things around town that I think are cool and you should check out too. As for inspiration, this one was extremely topical. Andrew Wong is a YouTube artist, essentially. He makes a bunch of really cool, weird music and has built a huge following. And obviously, make your own rules is a philosophy I live by. I had a feeling a lot of the stuff in this book I would already kind of know, but I'm getting towards the end of it where he talks about building a following, and it just seemed perfect because that's what I'm trying to do here, share more information with you guys, because not everyone can always make it into the shop. But we have a lot of similarities in how we approach music. We have very disparate taste in the music we like. We're inspired by a lot of stuff, and we end up making stuff that's kind of quirky and outside of the normal realm. I do that with music, but also obviously with the distillery, like very quirky Willy Wonka DIY vibes with this whole place, and very proud of what I've done here. So check him out. I'll drop a link below for that. And for music, I'm just going to plug myself today. If you don't know, if you've been to the shop, you've seen all the music gear around. I'm always playing in a few different projects, but the past year, a little over a year ago, I started getting serious about writing and recording my own stuff, because I've always played in bands, but I've never really produced my own material and had all these song ideas. And so I go by Shakesbeer on Instagram, SHAKESB, B as in boy, EERE. Put out 3 albums in the first year. It's weird. It's a mix of like indie, punk, pop, noise, electronic. One of them's just a full-on like ambient thing. A lot of synthesizers, bleeps and bloops. Just quirky stuff that I'm into. Feel free to check that out. I'm proud of it. I'm not sure everyone else is going to like it. Other episodes, if you know anybody you think I should check out, drop a comment. Let me know. I've got a few bands and artists in mind that I definitely want to share with you. That is it for now. See you next time.